Hey, hey, hey. So we are continuing on again, talking about our systems of inequality and power. We talked about it based on race. We looked at it exploring ethnicity and religion. And we are back this week. We are going to talk about it as it pertains to capitalism and social class. And what does that look like in the way that we define the social norms and characteristics and expected behaviors based on genders in our society. So we're going to begin with our first article. Our first article is by Joan Acker, and this article is entitled, "Is Capitalism Gendered and Racialized?" And what does that mean? And what does that look like? So what Joan is looking at is, the whole foundation of capitalism, that it has historically been dominated by white males. And so what does that look like for everyone else trying to live the American dream, so to speak, in our society? One of the things that this author talks about is she looks at the hegemonic masculinity, meaning this social norm of the dominant male characteristics, that the male is the one that's in charge. And how does that influence the way that our business world may run, how corporate America may run? How does that influence the expectations and the expected behavior of women in the workforce? Whether we're talking about women in management positions, whether it's middle management or upper level management, what does it look like for women, working women in general? And how does that impact also their finances? So these are some of the things that this author just begins to kind of tickle our funny bone with in this first article. So the next article that we look at is by Herbert Gans, and that article is entitled "Race as Class." Race as class. Now, this author, he explores the social foundation and the hierarchies that have been established as our social norm, looking at race, or I should say, functioning with race as an identified category that predetermines some behavior and expectations within our society. So when he begins in looking at race as class, he is exploring and claiming that even when we have immigrant groups who come over to the United States and try to assimilate within our culture, that they are so-called whitened into the social norm of society in order to be welcomed into higher class systems, higher social class systems. So this author, again, begins to look at and explore how the categories of race influence social class. Now, this next article, I'm really, really hoping that you guys kind of can delve into this a little bit, that we can explore this a little bit more. This third article is entitled "Media Magic, excuse me, let me start again. Media Magic, Making Class Invisible." So this author, when he's talking about making class invisible, he's examining how the media presents this misrepresentation of an egalitarian type of society, of a pluralistic type of society that dispels the economic inequalities. This author is exploring how the media creates this false sense of, I guess we could say, universal membership into the American dream, into middle class America. And in exploring that whole idea, he's looking at how many of us in society kind of remain blind to the inequalities that exist, and how they continue, or how we continue to present these inequalities in, I guess we could say, like the ways that may seem obvious, ways that may not seem obvious. One of the things that is explored, or that we can explore, is the whole idea of housing in the United States. And what does that look like? The whole concept of redlining. What does redlining mean in the United States when it comes down to the idea of equality in social class? And going back to the previous article, when we try not to make race a part of class. Okay, and so the final article that we're going to be reading excuse me, this week is by Thomas Shapiro, and this article is entitled Toxic Inequality: How America's Wealth Gap Destroys Mobility, Deepens the Racial Divide, and Threatens Our Future. So in this article, he does get kind of deep, y'all. So just put on your safety belt, pull down the safety bar, and let's just go for a journey. In this article, the author addresses some of his concerns about how the conversations of wealth inequality, how it often leaves out important aspects. And some of the important aspects that he says that it leaves out is the convergence of income and wealth inequality with widening racial wealth gap. Now we got to ask ourselves, what does that mean? And how might we see that played out? Might we see that played out with policies? Might we see that played out with legislation? This is where, when I introduced or I spoke about previously the whole concept of redlining, when we're looking at purchasing homes, and that whole idea of redlining is the idea of that your money as a racial minority is not going to be equal to my money as a white majority. So therefore, I need to make sure that the housing area where I am in, that area maintains a high level of income, and where you live, it can be whatever you need it to be, but it's never going to be equal to. So we're never going to be in a place where we are subscribing, so to speak, to the same type of wealth. Now, wealth does not equate to income. Let's not get that twisted, y'all. When we talk about wealth, we're talking about generational wealth. We're talking about building up your legacy, your financial legacy for future generations. So these are some of the things that this author, Thomas Shapiro, that he begins to explore. So that is this week when we talk about social inequality and power based on class and capitalism. All right, good people. I will see you all on the discussion post. You have an assignment. There is probably going to be some additional videos for you to watch to give you some additional information for addressing the discussion board post. And I think I already said your assignment. All right, y'all. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit me up by email or my office phone. I am getting my words twisted, y'all. I don't know what's going on today. But in the meantime, I bid you love, peace, and bacon grease, and I'll catch you on the discussion post.